News Now is brought to you by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. From the Pacific News Center in Hagåtña, Guam, here's Clint Rigel and Janella Carrera with Betsy Brown and Roselle Romanes. PNC Sports with Blake Watson. And weather with Joanna O. With your news now.
Hafadan, good evening, Guam. You're watching PNC's News Now, broadcasting live in Guam and in Saipan. I'm Janella Carrera.
And I'm Clint Rigel. Thanks for tuning in. Topping your news tonight, a private residence along Route 10 in Barrigada is being built with government funds through DPW. According to DPW Director Glenn Leon Guerrero, the project, which began before he took his position at DPW, was initiated in order to mitigate flooding in the area that was caused by DPW. The second story of this house in Barrigada is being built with government funds. It's owned by a man named Anthony Santos. DPW Director Glenn Leon Guerrero says it was done to alleviate flooding that was caused when DPW widened and raised this road in Barrigada.
So what that effectively done is it created flooding issues for the Santos family.
So the Santos family complained to Gov Guam, and a bill was introduced by Senator Dennis Rodriguez Jr. appropriating $215,000 to DPW to fix the flooding problem in this part of Barrigada. However, the legislation contained a key provision that made this all possible. The legislation allowed the funds to be spent at the discretion of the DPW director, who at the time was Carl Dominguez.
It's a very specific amount of money, very specific lot that we needed to take care of and address, and we did. So we went there and looked at several options. I think 4 or 5 options, and of the 5 options that we came up with, to include relocating the residence, Mr. Santos, to another location. Were all looked at, and they were all obviously more expensive than a $215,000 fix.
Leon Guerrero says the Santos family then suggested that they use the money to instead build a second story on his house, and DPW agreed.
We entered into a settlement agreement, which is registered at the Department of Land Management. And it releases the government saying that we did resolve and mediate the flooding issue. The funding for the construction of the second story of this house was provided for in Public Law 3253.
Closing arguments in the Titano rape trial began today. Prosecutor Jeremiah Luther focused on the credibility of the witnesses, but says it really boils down to the testimony of one witness, that of the victim.
Jurors will have to sift through the testimony of 18 witnesses in weighing the guilt or innocence of Francis Jude Titano, who's been accused of raping a 10-year-old girl back in 2007. But the prosecution says only 6 of the 18 witnesses are crucial to the case.
They will describe inconsistencies with Kathy Titano's testimony. And that is key, because allegations is that there were 3 people in the room when she was raped.
And those were the 2 people prosecutor Jeremiah Luther focused on the most, the victim and Kathy Titano, the defendant's wife. Luther offered an alternate explanation for Kathy's involvement in the alleged rape. Remember, the victim says Kathy woke up in the middle of it, saw her crying, then ordered her to go back to sleep. But Kathy says that simply never happened.
I don't want to believe that Kathy Titano actually watched her rape. And I submit that you can conclude by the evidence given to you that what happened was that Kathy Titano saw a scene that she didn't understand.
But the most important testimony to consider is that of the victim herself. Now 18 years old, Luther points out that her statements have been consistent from the very beginning. Luther acknowledges that questions have been raised about the victim's credibility.
So if you accept that, you have to resolve and conclude, why is willing to drop the emotional equivalent of a nuclear bomb in the middle of her family? You haven't heard testimony that was known for lying.
Defense attorney Mark Condis, however, reminded the jury that the focus of this case is not on the guilt or innocence of his client. Titano has nothing to prove, he says, because the burden of proof lies with the prosecution. This means that if the jury has even a shred of reasonable doubt, they must find the defendant not guilty.
And if you believe the testimony of and if you believe the testimony of Kathy Titano, and you go back to the jury room and you say to yourselves, I don't know which one to believe. That's reasonable doubt.
Once jury instructions are complete, the case will be handed over to them to decide.
The Guam Regional Medical City says its Chief Operating Officer, Gloria Long, was not removed from her position. GRMC sent out a press release this afternoon after PNC inquired about Long based on sources that said that she was removed from hospital management. However, CEO Margaret Bengzon says Long has been asked to take on a more direct role in supervising the final phase of the hospital's construction. Long was appointed in July of 2013 after former COO Kevin Hawes, who had only been with the company for 9 months, stepped down for personal reasons. Bengzon says instead she'll be spending more time on Guam as they near completion of the new hospital. And Bengzon will be sharing some of the responsibilities that Long had as COO. Bengzon said, quote, "Our mission is unchanged. The new GRMC hospital will soon open. We remain committed to serving the healthcare needs of our region by becoming a center of excellence for patient care and specialty healthcare services."
After last night's public hearing, Senator Sen Nicolas says he has more support from his colleagues for his bill to repeal raises for elected and public officials. The community came out in full force to last night's public hearing on the bill, which would repeal the law that gave Hay-recommended raises to the governor, lieutenant governor, cabinet members, and senators. Senator San Nicolas says that it was a good public hearing with testimony from both proponents and opponents of the measure, but he says the testimony was overwhelmingly in favor of the measure. He says this outpouring of public support is helping him to garner support from his fellow lawmakers.
From my understanding of communication with my colleagues, a lot of them are really starting to see the perspectives of the public as it relates to their opinions of this measure. And I really think that we're getting more votes this time. And I really think that we're very close to passing this bill.
The record and public testimony will be left open for 5 days to allow the public to submit written testimony on the bill. After that, he hopes to get the bill on the session floor as soon as possible.
After 15 years of planning and despite many obstacles, Guam Solid Waste Authority's new hazardous waste facility and the new Harmon transfer station are now open, allowing residents to dispose of hazardous household products. PNC's Rizal Romanes attended the tour this morning and has more in this report.
Now there's a place for residents to properly dispose of or recycle household products with the opening of the new household hazardous waste facility and the Harmon transfer station.
The new state-of-the-art facility is only accepting materials generated from households. Residents can drop off their hazardous waste for free with a limit of 15 gallons or 100 pounds per visit per day.
We're doing island-wide curbside recycling. We're doing bulky waste collection. Now we're going to be doing this transfer station.
U.S. Attorney Michael Schwab, speaking on behalf of U.S. Department of Justice Robert Mullaney, says the facility and the transfer station were part of the vision they had 15 years ago when the ORDOT dump was a crisis.
Forgive me for taking a moment to just take this in. There are provisions for getting rid of it in the proper manner. There are provisions for recycling some of it. It's just amazing.
The Harmon transfer station replaces the one that was closed at the ORDOT dump 4 years ago. Mr. Cruz, one of the first customers this morning, says he's glad to see a central station open again.
I feel great, man. So people don't have to go anywhere and dump somewhere and get rid of it there. Take it here. It's a good place to put it.
The new facility is located at the Harmon Industrial Park directly behind the Department of Public Works. It is open Thursdays through Mondays from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, except for holidays. Rizal Romanes, PNC News.
All right, thanks, Rizal. Well, our news director, Travis Kaufman, is offering a fresh perspective on current events by taking a look back each week in a news segment called Rewind. Tonight, he sits down with the Retirement Fund Chairman, Joe T. San Augustine.
On tonight's edition of Rewind, we invite Joe T. San Augustine of the Governor of Guam retirement fund. He joins us tonight on the program to give us a historical view of what happened, why we need this plan, what's the problem. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me here. Essentially, we had the old defined benefit plan, which was created in 1950, and by 1995, the government realized that it is becoming unbearable financially to support it, because it was actually designed a plan to be able to attract people to work for Guam in the early days.
Oh, okay, so they ditched that one.
They did that one and
introduced
a new plan, which is, they call it the direct contribution plan, which was designed in such a way to allow each employee the ability to select their own investment menu.
But the problem is, as I understand it, that employees were not taking advantage of it the way they thought they might, and people are having real problems in retirement. So now you've introduced a new plan.
What's
This
happening?
came in 2010.
What happened because of that fact, we have ended up with a lot of people that have been able to retire on the DC plan. They end up being welfare case. They don't have retirement income. They have no spousal benefit. They have no. The only thing they can get is half of it. It's been 20 years now since 1995. Those people are now reaching the age of retirement. They're probably reaching 60, 70. They're going to be looking for, and when they look at their account, which they get individual account every year, look at it. So how that's going to last that? What happened to me? What happened to my family?
So if you feel like this hybrid plan came out of nowhere, it's not true. In fact, it's a lot like the old defined benefit program to guarantee that all government of Guam retirees will have at least something when they retire. I'm Travis Kaufman, News Director for the Pacific News Center. This is Rewind.
All right, and that was our news director, Travis Kaufman, and Retirement Fund Board Chairman Joe T. That's how he's fondly known as, right?
Joe T.
Former speaker, Joe T.
As well, yes. All right, thanks to the both of them. And let's check in now with PNC's Betsy Brown to find out what's going down later on in the newscast.
When will the Hagatnya Library reopen? The answer on News Now after this.